Hey everyone, Sean and Dave here from the Saturday Morning Cartoons podcast. We cannot start this episode. We can absolutely not start this episode without thanking the following people who went to our patreon.com and support the show. So thank you, Fangirly,
Bill Dixon,
Jonathan Renteria Elye,
Jack Connolly,
Alice Kazanis,
Derek Haynes,
Melanie Harker,
Dr. Jason Woods,
Allison Keene,
Battle Mat Fitness,
Westbourne East Bred,
John Richard Helter II,
Dave Trumbore III,
damn it, again, and the one and only Sean Paul Ellis. Hey, listeners out there, if you want to get on this list of super cool people, we'd love it if you'd head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons, remember that's morning with a U, to see how you can support the podcast.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support. And now, on with the show.
Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's most stylish animated series. Coming to you from the sea beneath 14th Street, I'll be your East Side gentleman, Dave Trumbore. Joining me, as always, our very own Caprese boy, it's Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, bud?
David, I'm doing well, buddy. How about yourself? That was like a perfect intro.
Thanks. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's only going to get worse from here.
Oh, shit.
I'm feeling pretty elegant tonight. What about you?
I'm feeling a certain degree of sophistication. Like I'm ready to go out on the town and impress.
I feel like we need one more ingredient in this perfect cocktail, however. The one, the only, Allison St. Keene?
Ooh.
My existential dread is really acting up today.
She's got kind of a cloud over her, but it just works, you know? It just works.
For 2 seconds, I thought maybe Jaden Smith had joined us, but no, it's Allison. Great.
Is that a
Welcome, Allison.
Thanks.
Is that a compliment?
You
I think
don't deserve the big Toblerone, Sean.
We're just getting these all out of the way
But
right now.
I would fully believe that Sean is a Caprese boy, like a founding Caprese boy.
I love it.
We've
I
talked
love
about
it.
it.
I love
Like
it.
literally as soon as that episode I think went live, I was pretty sure that I was like, Sean, you're the Caprese boy.
Well, I think I asked if Sean, you'd like to know Yokio, and Dave was like, well, I mean, he is a Caprese boy, so.
I love
What can
everything
we say?
about this conversation and people talking about me like I'm not here listening to everything that's going on.
Did you not make or try a Caprese martini?
I really wanted
Oh,
to.
you haven't done it yet. Okay.
I haven't done it yet. It was bizarre because when this show came out on Netflix, I had
Only
in my
6 months
refrigerator
ago or so.
only 6 months ago, only 4 years ago when it came out.
When midnight blue suits were still acceptable and not gauche.
Right,
Exactly.
That short time frame. Yeah.
That really tiny little window. I had been buying mozzarella and I bought like the tiny little balls, so it would have been perfect to put like a toothpick in it and make it a garnish within a Caprese martini.
Kismet.
And, yeah, it's kismet. I really do want to go back and make it. I mean, I'm assuming it's like a Bloody Mary
Probably,
with
yeah.
just
Yeah.
garnished with a little bit of like a micro basil and a mozzarella
That's exactly
on
what
a
it is.
skewer.
Exactly what
That's
it is. And you
perfect.
can open up just like a little kiosk there, just like a 2-seat bar that only serves Caprese martinis. And if the owner happens to stop in and your best friend is there, there are no more seats for any other patrons.
So VIP.
It's very VIP. It's VVIP.
Well, you know, I mean, let's examine this from a business standpoint.
Okay.
That's relatively decent marketing.
Sure.
If you think to yourself, I really want to go and try this place out, and they've created a demand of only 2 seats, I'm gonna wait. Like they're gonna velvet rope the hell out of this, waiting for people to actually get in.
It's very
I
New
kind of
York.
like
It
Very-
actually, I think, was something that was legitimately started in New York and probably lasted as long as this series itself for its runtime. Maybe
Thanks.
3 hours.
It's more like a pop up, right?
Yeah, it was basically like a pop-up, yeah. But I'm pretty sure they did that in New York, which, honestly, there were a lot of things that, for anybody who's never spent any appreciable amount of time in New York, a lot of the jokes and stuff in this show may fly over your head like a mecha butler, but I don't know, we'll talk about it tonight, how well the humor kind of works for the different approaches I think that they tried to do with this. But what are we even talking about tonight? We've thrown around a lot of crazy words here. What are we even talking about?
I know, guys. We're talking about Netflix original series Neo Yokio.
Because it's Anime April. And every week we'll ask
Oh.
ourselves, is this thing we're watching actually anime?
this month in particular started out with a bang, with some real quirky characters, pun intended. And then we've had an opportunity to then talk about Ruby and kind of continue to have some semblance of an opinion, pun intended again, that we've been developing, that anime doesn't actually have to have a specific origin. There's a lot of times that people can create something and it can have that target or that influence or be anime adjacent and still be anime, which is a pretty incredible thing to have. And to have these cartoons be coming from the United States back to Japan, to have France creating an anime. So, I mean, it's just, and now Netflix got in the game and they were like, we want to make a really weird anime and put Jaden Smith in it.
Well, and then as Sean's about to tell you with the history of this one kind of blends all of those things together. There's a co-production between American and Japanese studios. The creator himself has answered the question, at least in his opinion, of whether or not this is anime. So without giving more away, I'll let Sean get into it with our history of. Yeah, we did say Neo Yokio. I was just like, I feel like we didn't say it. Yeah, you said it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so Neo Yokio itself has the ability to defer the passage of time or just lengthen it. So it probably felt to you like I had said it maybe an hour or 3 hours ago.
Pretty
so
close.
you're right to ask questions.
Yeah, people are going to think that we had an editing problem and stopped and then came back to start that joke. But no, that was in real time. That was just my brain flatlining. So Sean's going to take over while I get myself together.
Oh, man. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Neo Yokio is an American-Japanese co-produced animated television series created by Ezra Koenig of the American rock band Vampire Weekend and produced by the Japanese anime studios Production IG and Studio Dean. The first season, consisting of 6 episodes, premiered on Netflix in September of 2017. Following a hiatus from Vampire Weekend, Koenig wrote and produced the animated comedy adventure series about a depressive, demon-slaying playboy voiced by Jaden Smith. It's like right in his wheelhouse.
It just makes me so mad, just that one line.
Neo Yokio is presented in the style of Japanese anime. However, in an interview with Rolling Stones magazine, Koenig stated that he believed the show is not a traditional anime. He's quoted saying, "First of all, out of respect for true anime, I've always called Neo Yokio anime inspired. It's a hybrid, but I've always been a fan of anime, and I've always wanted to do something that was kind of an homage to it. Maybe a loving parody." On an episode of Time Crisis in early 2018, Koenig spoke about the future of Neo Yokio, hinting that Neo's not dead.
Yay! I am specifically on this podcast because I love Neo Yokio, and I'm here as an apologist because it makes Dave just grind his teeth.
Grind my Toblerones.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that some of like the best anime storyboard artists worked on this project. Like people who worked on Rurouni Kenshin, Hunter x Hunter, Yasura Yatsura. So I mean, like it's crazy to think that some of these people were behind the scenes putting this together, and it's crazy to think that Koenig was like, this is just anime inspired, despite the fact that they had anime production studios creating it.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those, I think maybe even more so than the other ones we've talked about this month, where you could have a lot more of a conversation about whether you want to call this anime or not. I mean, even the creator says it's anime inspired, but it seems more of a respectful approach than anything else.
I think that that's a smart move on his part, because even though the production itself is handled by people that have worked on other animes, like Ezra Koenig himself is just an American dude, and just a white American dude, and so I feel like that's very, like you said, respectful. I think is a good word to say. Like, he understands that he created this, and it's never really going to be anime in a traditional sense. And so I'm totally fine with that, But it does come pretty close in a lot of stylistic ways, I guess.
It would be like if Wes Anderson was like, I'm going to make Seven Samurai, and it's going to be my Seven Samurai, and it's definitely Seven Samurai, and like never mention Kurosawa or any like references or influences on him. People would probably be upset with that. Isle of Dogs. But the fact that he didn't, I think this was a smart play. He took things that he was clearly influenced by, something that he had wanted to do for who knows how long, And you can see the influences in the direct call-outs to some of the great anime moments and anime series in this short series itself. It's only 6 episodes. You can see them, and then we will get into a discussion about how well that all works together as a whole. But for folks out there who don't even know what we're talking about, let's get into the synopsis of Netflix's Neo Yokio. Neo Yokio is the greatest city in the world, a modern-day alternate timeline New York where magicians saved the city from ruin by demons in the 19th century, gaining a place in the upper echelons of society and becoming known as magistocrats. The series revolves around Kaz Khan. I can never say his name. Kaz Khan, correct? Kaz Khan, played by Jaden Smith, a vain and wealthy magistocrat, and his mecha butler Charles, voiced by Jude Law, as he balances a vapid and decadent life as a fashionista in the city, with his demon-hunting duties managed by his stern Aunt Agatha, played by Susan Sarandon. So wrap that around in your noodle for a little bit. He's wealthy, he's got magical powers, he has a job slaying demons, but he really can't be arsed to do that because he's got so many...
He's on the Bachelor board.
And he's on the Bachelor board. He's got too many things in high society that take up a lot of his time, so that's an eternal sense of consternation for him, unfortunately.
I have to think that during the time that I was in high school, if somebody was asking me to play field hockey, to also be a demon slayer, and be, fashion forward, I mean, I would have only been able to really do one of those three. So the fact that he's...
Which one of those?
I'm gonna be honest with you, probably none of the three.
I think that's interesting. So for those who don't know that, you mentioned that Ezra Koenig was in Vampire Weekend,
Right.
but he's the lead singer, but he's also the lyricist, which I think is a really important point here. Because if you're familiar with the band, and you should be because they're great, if you're familiar with them, you know that their lyrics are very meta, clever. Like the way that he writes songs is really unique. And if you watch Neo Yokio, you very much see that it's in that same vein. Like he plays with words in a way that's like very specific. Sometimes even Dave laughed because it's just so
You usually get me about one laugh an episode.
Yeah, it's unexpected. He's just really clever and he's really meta, and that's not for everybody. Vampire Weekend style isn't for everybody, but it's definitely his show. Like it's very much his style, and so I do respect that too, where he's just like, this is what he does, and take it or leave it. But I like it, but some people don't.
What's funny is I do like Vampire Weekend, and I even like some of the songs that like nobody either has heard of, not to sound hipster, but or just doesn't like.
That sounds so
I know,
hipster,
and I didn't
Dave.
mean to.
I like Vampire Weekend, but like only the really.
But like only the ones that like no one's heard of.
You're being a herb, Dave.
It's the worst.
Yeah, what Vampire Weekend? I'm gonna challenge you.
Like,
What Vampire
like
Weekend
Horchata,
song?
and I really hope that that's a song by them, because if it's not, I'm just
Oh
gonna
my
like
God.
burst into flames with embarrassment. But like I like the song Horchata, and most people are like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And
That was like a radio
it was a
single.
radio single, yeah. So I'm not saying like the songs that nobody has heard of by any means or stretch of the imagination.
You're a bad hipster,
I'm a bad
buddy.
hipster. I'm a herb hipster. I'm a herbster. Yikes! But that's just to say that I do like the musical side of things. So I was interested when this project was originally announced, and then when it first showed up. But beyond that, that's about as far as I can go.
Well, it's interesting because some of the musical criticism of Vampire Weekend is that so the guy that does all their musical arrangements, his name is Rostam. How do you say it's Batman?
I say Batman Glige, but I have no clue if that's how you say it. I just like to say Batman in people's names.
He goes by Rostam, so that's what I'll call him that. So he's put out a solo album, and it's absolutely amazing and incredible. And his whole thing is that he elevates Ezra Koenig's lyrics in this way musically that becomes really emotional and deep, and like it makes it into something more. And I think that if there's a criticism of Neo Yokio, it's that it's extremely shallow and surface driven. I mean, it's meant to be in a way, but there's absolutely nothing deeper there, and you can sort of see how he needs that balance of another creative force that's going to push it to make it a little deeper and a little more, substantive.
I think when we get into the plot, we can say like what we think the arc for these 6 episodes was supposed to be.
The Archangelo of these 6
The
episodes.
Archangelo. Because what it sets up to be, at least in a typical anime approach, is almost instantly dropped at the end of the 2nd episode, and then something different picks up for the rest of the series. So
Yep.
we can talk about it, and there's a lot of different angles to talk about. We spoke about music. So you guys have anything else to say before we jump into the theme song, which we'll talk about? But
Let's do
No,
it.
great segue. Let's get into this theme song.
yeah, it's different
Did so Ezra Koenig was also he picked all the music for the show as well, right?
as far as I know.
Correct.
None of it is original except for because everything is like classical musical pieces and things like that. for
Usually,
the
I
most
think
part.
I don't know if actually the intro specifically was a piece of classical music. It's violin music, so it's just orchestral music. I think it's only maybe like a solo violin that plays over the intro of it.
Yeah.
Because it's essentially just like a musical interlude that plays over a weird kind of visual introduction of all the different characters in just like different ways. But it's just got like a really bland kind of salmon colored background that I don't know, that for some reason that color by itself just really irritates me. I don't know what it is.
Find it soothing.
You find it soothing? It's just like a salmon pastel background that all these otherwise bold colored characters play out in front of. What do you think, Sean? Is there anything more to it than that?
I think it's actually, I think it's elegant. I
Oh
think
my
it's
God.
very
Here
simple.
we go, ladies and gentlemen.
And for a show that is really trying in some cases to be niveau riche, like this does a decent job of kind of hitting that spot and doing well. I mean, look at it this way. It's simplistic. Granted, it's not an earworm, but if you heard it, you'd just be like Allison said, this is kind of relaxing. This is
Yeah.
kind of something I could zone out to. We get a roll call from some of these different characters.
But it's a visual roll call, we will say.
Correct.
It's not part of the theme song itself. It's part of the intro.
Well, I'm not going to say anybody's name over a violin. What am I, savage?
I mean, this isn't
Come on,
Gregorian
dude.
house.
Oh my God. For everybody playing at home, I will be representing the proletariat. Sean and Allison are the bourgeoisie tonight, in case everybody's playing at home.
Dave
You
is a Helena St. Tessera.
I'm a Hellenistic
Just-
domestic terrorist tonight, essentially. Powered by diamonds and demon magic.
And now the government's listening to this podcast.
Totally fine with that, because now we'll get more hits.
Jesus.
What-
I
yeah, go ahead.
I just think ultimately it is something that is very elegant. It's almost delicate
Yeah.
as a
yeah.
theme song, and I really enjoyed the simplicity of it, because if you're coming into this for the first time, sorry, we're gonna spoil some things tonight. So if you're planning on watching it, maybe pause now, watch the 6 episodes, and then come back for the discussion. But
It doesn't take
There's-
long.
Carve out 4 hours of your life built around this podcast episode.
yeah, right. We do it every week.
That's true.
So you can too. I believe in you. You can do
We
it.
got the
You can
faith.
make Neo Yokio happen. But I just think in terms of being able to set kind of the tone and the mood for this, I enjoyed it. I actually thought it was not a half bad intro.
It's fine. It's just one of those things that unless it's pulled, I'm trying to pull up a soundtrack right now. Unless it's pulled from an actual piece of classical music, it's not gonna stick in my mind at all. It's just like a nice different violin 30-second intro that plays over these things, and that's about it. What's interesting, we pulled up a headline where it was like, shouldn't there be more music in Neo Yokio? Like, it doesn't have a really strong pull throughout the series. There are moments where like a classical piece will strike up, or there's a moment where Kaz has celebrated a victory with his friends, and he wants Charles, his mecha butler, to play a particular piece of music, and he says, "Should I play violin concerto in D minor, Master Kaz?" And he's like, E flat major or something to that. And he's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful selection." And then they play it, I presume, that actual song. But that's like the only time that music actually comes through in the script, or punches through into the story in a meaningful way.
But it makes sense because the show is so manic and it's so dense with the dialogue. And again, like the word choice is so important that it kind of makes sense that it cuts back on that particular aspect. It
Right.
doesn't, you're not overwhelmed by the music. It's just sort of this like light orchestral score that kind of goes to the background. It's all taken from, classical works. Like I said, I don't think any of it's original, but that I think it works because it doesn't have to be the center of attention.
Well, and it also works too because it's providing that sort of background as like, oh, you hear classical music, you automatically think, a symphony orchestra. You automatically think of higher class, higher society, that kind of stuff. You don't often associate that with like dive bars or slums or anything like that. Like it's the music that's specifically pointing you towards that kind of aesthetic. So to have it in the background, actually, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
I guess I just wonder, with such strong musical influence from Koenig, why, why the soundtrack and score for this in general is just so muted. I
think it's like what Allison said, though. It just kind of like lends itself to the piece rather than standing out to be its own thing.
And also, I don't know that that's his forte, honestly. Right. Like I said, I mean, that wasn't really his main thing in Vampire Weekend. Yeah, he's more of a writer maybe than.
Maybe Rostam wasn't on board for Yokio.
He wasn't. He was busy making his album.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't want to be a jerk, but maybe he should have gotten together with 3 other people who also play instruments and been like, guys, I'm making this anime-inspired show for Netflix, so how about we all just get on board? And then it could have been Netflix presents Vampire Weekend's Neo Yokio.
So that actually sounds kind of cool because then it's got like a band stamp behind it, but maybe he didn't want to do that. I mean, we also talked about My Chemical Romance.
Mm-hmm.
The people behind My Chemical Romance put out, what was the anime again?
Umbrella Academy.
So I don't think, if that's aired, I haven't seen it, and I apologize. Okay, so it's not out yet, so we'll see how that plays and what different approaches they take to that. Because that's another way that you can add, your own specific style of music. And I don't want to sound like a herb hipster or anything, but I'm a fan of My Chemical Romance, but not exactly the songs that people are aware of. Just to put it.
Oh my God! How hipster? What song from My Chemical Romance have we been listening to? Swear to God, if you say fucking horchata on this, I'm
Parade,
done.
It's a remix of.
Okay, we're ending this podcast. It's going to become a podcast where we review horchata.
I would actually be okay with that if somebody wants to pay us to do that.
Well, that's going to be real weird because I actually can't drink horchata.
You can't drink horchata?
It has milk in it.
Yeah, it's got milk in it.
It's got milk in it.
This podcast has made the two of us lactose intolerant. It has something to do with like close field radiation from microphones or something. This week's episode is sponsored by Yeti. So anything else music-wise?
Weirdly, no. I think that it's...
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like the least thing to talk about.
It's not a memorable part of the show.
No, it's not. Like, nobody has a theme. Even the theme song itself doesn't like really get you ramped up. Nope. Charles doesn't have his own flying theme. There's not really any like action set pieces set to this. There's plenty of action in it. It's just
that's why I like it though, because it's so chill, and that's their whole thing. It's like they're just chill.
It's so chill to the point that I have trouble staying awake and really pushing through to focus on this thing. But we'll get to that.
The unexamined life isn't worth living, bro.
There go. Thanks, Gottlieb. All right, animation style. This is where I'm curious about what the budget for this thing actually was. Because there's no music to speak of except what was classically sourced from artists who died 200 years ago or more. The animation style, like you said, comes from well-known storyboard artists, but they take a lot of the same animation shortcuts that we've seen in some rougher productions. A lot of sort of still images, a fair amount of repeated images, a kind of shitty job of dubbing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Do you think that was intentional in any way?
I don't know. I don't know how much of it is like budgetary shortcuts and like, wow, we've only got this much we want to put into it, especially because it's only 6 episodes, and how much is supposed to be a pretentious commentary on classic animation. I don't know.
I mean, as someone that doesn't watch a lot of animation and particularly doesn't watch a lot of anime, I didn't notice that. Okay. Like, to me, it just was like, this looks like an anime thing. In my ignorance, I said. But like, it's... Yeah, to me, it's not something that I noticed specifically as being a shortcoming of the series. But yeah, I mean, for all of Netflix's money, they don't really spend a lot on a lot of these shows, sort of surprisingly. So that's a good point. Like maybe they they said, we'll give you this to play with and see what you can do.
Even like the Mecha Butler, probably my favorite character, easily my favorite character. I hate everybody else on the series. Even his
Jesus.
eyes will go just wonk at times. Like his eyes, he's got blue eyes set in like triangular white irises or whatever, and they'll just like they'll just go off to the sides at random times for no particular reason. And the rest of him is just blocks. Like he's just blocks put together. There's no reason for him to be a difficult piece to animate.
It's very, very, very angular
It's very
for
angular,
Charles.
yeah.
It's interesting. A lot of what the design for this, it's hard because there's extremes, and I think Dave is right in some sense, and I also agree with Allison that I don't think that the art design or any of the coloring is distracting in any way. I just think that sometimes it's very, again, like majority of the show, it's very muted.
And it's flat too. It
yeah.
just feels flat. Yeah.
Now, some of the characters that are in here, the way that they're designed, they sort of look like if you were to get the notebook of a kid in high school who was drawing a lot of anime at that time.
Right. If you
And
took
had, like-
my notebook,
Yeah, if you took my chemistry notebook from high school, you would have found a lot of pictures of Goku in it. And so I feel like some of the design for this is akin to kind of very juvenile style, like very angular faces, kind of very angular faces leading up to like those kind of like rounded top heads that are classic and
Little radish
synonymous.
heads. Yeah.
Exactly. Synonymous for anime. And then in one hand, you can have a character that has kind of this juvenile look to it, and then they can turn around in kind of almost a classic anime style, and then suddenly they're a little bit more detailed. There's a little bit more attention that's paid to what their design is because they're about to probably do something really cool.
And that's the thing. You can see the specific scenes that they really like focused on, and that he really had a strong description for, or a strong idea of what they were going to look like. And we'll talk about them in a second, specific homages. But
I think the craziest thing for me is the actual, as we've mentioned, sort of that salmon color bump screen that they have with the picture of Kaz Khan with sort of these kind of purplish dreadlocks hair, and he's kind of making like a like almost
the grimace face emoji face.
No, it's almost like a Steve Urkel, like did I do that? Like kind of face on the front of it, and that to me, there's a lack of detail or sophistication for such a character that is unbelievably sophisticated that they put into this, and then I feel like it almost that head that they drew does a disservice because that's all that some of this is. It's just
he looks like what's his name, Grape Juice or whatever, who we talked about from My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
The little pop off kid.
Yeah, the little perv with the balls that stick to
With
stuff.
the sticky balls. Yeah.
But it is unusual, right? That two of the main characters, Kaz and his friend Lexi, are both black, or like the sort of presumption is that like they are the only ones that have dark skin color, and that's unusual in an anime, right? Especially for a lead.
Yeah,
Yes.
For the most part, you don't usually see that. I mean, honestly, I'm just off the top of my head, I go back to like Static Shock is the first thing that came to mind as far as like, and obviously not anime inspired. It's just an action cartoon that came out of DC Comics. But yeah, I mean,
Like race doesn't play into the story of Neo Yokio at all. Everything sort of like the name itself is just sort of like an amalgamation of various things. Like no one pays attention to race, or in this case, crazy hair color, or like whatever. But what I thought was interesting is after the show came out is how many fans who were black were like, finally, I can cosplay as a black character that's an anime and just put on like this like hot pink wig and look in a suit and a giant Toblerone and look awesome. So that is one thing that I really, really respected with that, is like the choice that he made. Again, like just as this white dude writing this series, he's pulling a lot from Japan stylistically, but then also he's making a conscious choice to not only make two of his characters black, but cast two black voice actors as well, which seems like it should be obvious, but is not an obvious thing.
no, not at all. Especially for like when you're saying like, I want to make an anime and it's going to be led by Jaden Smith playing a black magician.
Yeah, which is amazing. Like that's actually amazing.
No, totally fine with that. And like I said, when this was in production stage, I was like, cool, not super on board with the Jaden Smith thing, but I like everything else that's going on, so we'll see how this works out.
I feel like this is another segment that we call here on the show. Cautiously optimistic Dave.
Yeah, pretty much every time. Every time. Jaden Smith, though, it's real tough to be cautiously optimistic about that young man. So many
Why?
chances.
I mean, you've
I think it works for the character, though.
I don't know. I felt like he never got comfortable with his character.
But Kaz is also by far the least interesting character on the show.
You know,
Yes.
he's our introduction to like all the mythology, and there's no focus on racial differences, but there is a focus on class differences, location differences, familial differences. I still don't know how the genetics of this world work out exactly, but
Or what magistocrats really are, or what they really do.
yeah, they don't really spend any time digging into that. Like Allison mentioned earlier, it's very superficial. But I don't know where I was going with that, so go ahead, Sean.
Well, no, I just want to say you bring up a great point, is that they gloss over
Yep.
the most important and the most interesting thing in this entire show. And they're like, we're going to show you now a car chase.
Well, but
Why?
here's what I wanted to talk about then, and I kind of want to save it for plot, so let me just pin this right now and say, this show introduces you to Neo Yokio, it gives you a brief history of it, and then it introduces these magistocrats who are demon slayers.
Right.
My question to you guys is that his actual focus of this series, or is that just a cool hook? But I want to come back to that in the plot, because
Stay tuned to find out.
don't fast forward just yet, kids. But since we're on animation style, a couple things jumped out at me that we tend to talk about on this show as highlights for things that animated series do well, when they change up the animation style within the show itself. That's always cool, because that shows that they put some time and some effort and some money into it. So you get to see that on occasion. You get to see Kaz's character when he changes into the Caprese boy. He kind of gets like this different, he gets like a sheen to him. He gets a different kind of like look to him. There's a moment or two where he turns very cartoonish, where he either like sees a girl that he likes or something kind of pervy happens or whatever off screen. He goes a little cartoonish. They always get that little blush in their cheeks whenever they're embarrassed or like a romantic situation happens. Specifically for me, well, we can talk about this more in the characters, but obviously Charles is sort of a callback to Transformers. There's an Akira sequence that shows up where they essentially take like the exact frame by frame beats of an Akira moment and bring it into Neo Yokio, which was fun as an Akira fan. And then there's a big chunk of this that actually goes to Speed Racer. So a lot of the characters kind of look like Speed Racer meets Pokemon style. That's kind of like the character style you're looking at. So that's what it's based on. So don't expect a lot of shading, a lot of depth, a lot of shadow, a lot of 3D stuff. It's pretty basic. But I do like that they focused on specific moments throughout these 6 episodes for specific homages that he wanted to call out. So that's all I'll say.
For homages like that, Dave, I mean, a classic is a classic when talking about clothes, cars, and watches, but scent needs to change with the times, don't you agree?
Oh my God, definitely tell a grieving old man at the grave of his dead
Don't get me
wife.
wrong, I'm very touched by the dedication to your dead wife.
And I love I love that scene. I love to hate that scene because that just tells you everything from my point of view. That's everything that's wrong with this character, even if that's what the show intends it to be.
Yeah, because we're not supposed to like Kaz.
Oh my God, I hate him in that moment.
Yeah, which is a great way to segue into talking about Kaz
You want
Khan.
to talk about it? What do you think about Kaz, Allison?
I think he's fine because I think that I think he's just fine. I think that like we said, he's really sort of the least interesting character on the show because he what was the description of a depressive, narcissistic, whatever. Like he's
Playboy.
Playboy.
Because,
Yeah.
and Sean mentioned earlier, just real quick. Sean, I think, said when he was in high school, these guys are a little bit older than high school because at some point they go back to their like preparatory school time or their high school time and actually act as like teachers. So I think they're a little bit removed from high school and they're in that kind of like weird zone in maybe their early to mid 20s.
I also want to comment on the fact that their school is called Easton, which is the blue-collar Pennsylvania town in which Dave grew up, and it makes him even angrier than usual
Frustrating.
every time it's mentioned.
Because they talk about the uniforms at the Easton school and how they're so prestigious, and that's where they all went to school, and every time it just makes me so mad. I will say it is actually a port of the Dalton School, which is, I think it's upper, I don't know my boroughs very well. It's a New York preparatory school. private and very prestigious, and it's meant for like Ivy League prep. So that's what it's based on. I hate the fact that I used my hometown's name for it because that's about as far from Dalton as you can get. But I digress.
But yeah, so Kaz is our introduction into all of this, and he's fine. He's not particularly heroic. He's not particularly clever or interesting or sympathetic or really anything. But he doesn't kind of have to be, because there's nothing in Neo Yokio that requires you to have those feelings. It's more just like, look at these clever things that are happening. Sometimes they're quite funny, wouldn't you
Do
say?
you think he's a sociopath, though?
No, I think he's just a narcissistic kid.
But how many narcissistic kids do you know that land in a graveyard, insult an old man because of his chosen perfume that he's spraying on a grave, and then take off on their mecha butler and knock the dude over with the exhaust fumes?
But I think that's just sort of part of the whole cluelessness of like, these kids are just idiots, and
It would have been great if that old man came back as like the domestic terrorist, but
Oh, Jesus.
He's just old man in a graveyard, as played by Ray Wise.
I mean, you have to realize this is the moment too where Charles drops the line. He's like, the bubble traffic downtown is going to be horrendous.
Love
and you're
it.
like, oh, I did love that. I did love that line. The bubble traffic.
And they have bubble
God
traffic. It's like
damn it.
it's like Mist. It's like using the roller coaster thing in Mist or
Right.
something out of BioShock. Like that's cool. It's a cool world.
they tease some cool things. But I also want to mention this as we're talking about characters, how deep the bench goes on the actors that are voicing this. Yeah, I mean, Jaden Smith, Jude Law, Susan Sarandon, Jason Schwartzman, Richard Iowata, just like it goes on and on. I mean, you have like throwaways like Peter Serafinowicz is just like a various recurring voice actor. Yeah, Steve Buscemi, like Stephen Fry. It goes so deep. Like every single person in this is somebody. And it's what I'm interested in is actually why they got involved, like what they thought was interesting about the series.
I'm sure they just have connections somewhere, either through Jaden or through Koenig himself.
Oh, I'm sure, but like, what about this made them interested to want to do Neo? We'll see. Dave's making the cash money sign, but we just said that they probably did. Or do you think they spent the whole budget on
Law and Susan Sarandon?
But I also think that like that's one of the weird things about this, that like Neo Yokio is not something that I would recommend to everyone. Like I completely understand that it's a very niche thing that some people are going to love and some people are not. But what is weird is like how many like really well-known actors are a part of this, and it elevates it to this weird thing where people are like, well, maybe I should watch this. Like all these people are involved in it. It's not meant for that.
This was the reason I was excited when they were announcing all this stuff, because they were like, Jude Law is going to be here. I'm like, Jude Law in an anime? That's weird. Susan Sarandon. I'm like, okay, this could be an actual thing. But you hear those names and you think they're going to bring a certain amount of gravitas or a certain amount of like performance to the characters, but the writing was just never really there for that to give them. They were all one note.
Yeah, there's no depth.
There's no depth. They all are great, but they don't have anywhere to go with it. There's not. This isn't arcs for them. This is just like you said. Look at this weird thing that's happening, or look at the clever thing that I just did.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Allison kind of hit it like right on the head.
Yeah.
This show gives you a lot of things and kind of serves them up, and then kind of like knowingly looks at you and is like, do you like this? Do you like me? Do you like what we're showing? Do you like what we're showing here? And then I think that actually plays into Dave's idea of, maybe Jaden never really kind of feeling 100% comfortable with his character. I don't think this show in some cases actually was 100% comfortable with what it was actually delivering to the viewer.
Point. And as Dave keeps teasing, we'll get more into the plot later. But no, Sean, I think that's an excellent point. Is that I don't think the show knows what it wants to do, and there's some parts of it that are actually like really fun and clever, but it doesn't have the time or the interest to go deep into the mythology, and maybe it isn't there. Maybe it was this sort of there are teases there, but yeah.
And to that point, I think an homage to certain things is wonderful. I love Akira. I love Speed Racer. To have these sort of subtle nods in there is super fun. But at the same time, you created, again, I know I hate that I have to reiterate this, but we have a fashionista, demon-slaying playboy as the lead character, and we continue to say he's not interesting. Like I actually think he's the most interesting character, but he's also the most
should be.
He should be. He's the most muted character in a muted, animated, and scored show.
Yeah.
Which kind of blows my mind.
But I think the fact that we keep saying muted though too, it's not that he doesn't get a chance to do things. He's given every opportunity in the world.
Oh, yeah.
For a number of different ways to approach that.
He's dug his own grave in this case.
He does, because he just wants to he just wants to eat squid ink noodles. He doesn't want to go to lunch. He doesn't want to do the job to pay money. He doesn't want to go after his girlfriend. He just wants to mope about her. He doesn't want to go ride around on his mecha butler. He just wants to chill with his friends and drink martinis. He doesn't want to do any of these things. Yeah.
Out of that entire laundry list of things, Dave, the only thing I can relate to is riding on my mecha butler.
I know,
That's
me
it.
and
That's
you.
the kind of man I am these days.
Here's what I love about the mecha name drop, though. There's a moment in this series where they actually are like, oh, that's right, it's a mecha. You're watching this whole thing. I'm going to get into spoilers because I don't even care at this point. This has been out for 6 months now. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers, stop listening now because we're going to get into plot soon. And the show is too short in its runtime to not talk about some of the plot stuff that happens. So if you really want to go watch it, pause now, go watch it for 3 hours, and then come back. There's a moment where Jude Law's character, Charles the Mecha Butler, who is treated savagely throughout this entire series, by the way. I felt really bad for him. They basically are abusing him. They're not listening to the fact that he needs to go charge his batteries or get a replacement battery.
Because they're always selfishly motivated.
Super selfish. They just use him to do whatever they have to do and go wherever they have to go. It turns out, because Charles is a mecha butler, that it is not a sentient robot. There's actually a very small person inside of Charles who's piloting him the whole time.
An older Cockney woman named Sadie.
Cockney woman named Sadie, who I think was still done by Jude Law, if I'm correct. I think he's just putting on that voice.
If it is a spot-on old Cockney impression of a woman.
It's either him or Richard Iwata.
I think it's Jude Law, though.
It might be. It does kind of.
Iwata has that range, and I feel like Jude Law could probably do that. But it's amazing because that's a fun mecha reference for people like me who are super nerdy about the mecha robot difference. But it also adds this weird layer. It's one of the few things in this show that adds an extra layer of intrigue or is a really funny and surprising moment that complicates the character interrelationships a little bit more. Because Kaz is used to having Charles around as just his butler, his manservant. He reads him stories in the bath. He tucks him in at night. He knows his most deepest personal, darkest things.
Bachelor board insecurities.
His bachelor board insecurities, all his problems with the ladies. But there's a tiny Cockney woman inside this robot the whole time. So it's an extra kind of funny layer that they add to
But
it.
once they mention that, once he talks to her, right. And he's like, hey, you've seen me in the bath? And she's like, oh, Cassie, I've seen everything. But then after that, his interactions with Charles really don't change. No, they're completely back. But then Sadie, she does come out in the finale, though, and I love that one scene where she's just running riot, basically doing whatever she wants in the apartment, and Cass just goes, I hate her. And the way that line delivery might be the best thing that Jaden Smith does. But
it's funny that she ends up being a plot point, too, at the end.
Right.
Okay, real quick, because I want to get into the plot, but do you guys have any other favorite characters outside of the main? I mean, we haven't talked about Arcangelo.
I love Arcangelo because I love Jason Schwartzman. And I love the fact that, he comes back as, he just wants to be a homie.
But that's that's what I'm talking about with the plots in this thing. Nobody has an arc, to the point that even, his main rival, they never get over that. He just comes back at the end and is just I just want to be homies.
Yeah.
That's it. That's their conflict resolution because they don't have time.
They don't have time for it, yeah. But it works somehow. And I also love Lexi and Gottlieb. I think that they're hysterical. The episode when they get transformed into a panda and a woman are some of the best things that this whole series does.
Wasn't that an homage to Ron Mahaf?
I mean, probably, yeah. I didn't actually even think of that until you just said it, but probably, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Lexi and Gottlieb were the best characters, and they are voiced by the Kid Miro and Dacis Nice, respectively. Yeah. That was, I think, what sold me on this show. It wasn't, I think it was really the relationship that they have between the two of them.
It wasn't Jaden Smith?
Not really. I mean, I I like Jaden Smith. I'll be honest with you. Ever since The Pursuit of Happiness, I'm going to say I haven't been super excited about some of his theatrical
10
endeavors.
to 12 years.
But I mean, and Dave, you mentioned Charles too as a key character. I mean, he's definitely the only one that you can really. He's actually weirdly, he's a robot piloted by a small Cockney woman, but he is also the deepest and most emotional character.
Right.
Also like the tragic character, but also like the voice of reason, the one that's down to earth, the one that keeps everybody else on task. These wild kids running around.
But Lex and Gottlieb their comedic timing too for those actors are hysterical. And Agatha, I never really connected with. She didn't really do much for me. And Helena didn't really do anything for me either. I think she just felt really flat, more so than others. I like the whole Helena plot line. That was all just sort of silly, and it actually played into the demon slaying plot. I don't know. I liked sort of everyone they introduced because they were just so bizarre. But as far as like the ones that the recurring characters.
I really enjoyed Sailor Pellegrino.
Okay, me too. Yeah.
For like a hot second, but I think it's so funny because when you're introduced to her, you sort of get this song, and I love the fact that you have Kaz just saying she has a voice like cashmere, and then Charles immediately backs it up to qualify it with the type of cashmere which is just great. And she's super, and you find out very quickly that beautiful singing voice. And then when she sits down, she's like, "Hi, how y'all doing? I'm from the South. I'm just a humble singer from North Kakalaka." And that threw me for such a loop, especially during the kiss cam scene, like a second later, where she kisses Kaz and he gets that nosebleed, which to me, I was like, you can't get any more classic anime inspiration than a man receiving affection from a woman and his nose immediately bleeding.
Yeah. At least he didn't like rocket out the roof like he would.
Like Master Roshi?
Or Master Roshi, yeah. What I actually liked about her, there's a weird thing that happens that is really easy to gloss over here, right? So we're talking about, well, there's actually two very weird things with her. The first one that shows up is the National Anthem.
Right.
It's very different from what you're used to hearing if you live here in America. I don't remember the exact lyrics, but it plays into the idea that like something has happened in this country. We have flooded most of New York City, up like below the 14th Street is all flooded. They have moments where they like are on a boat and they float up to the World Trade Center, or they float up. They go underwater to visit either restaurants or people's houses. They take these bubble tubes through the water, but you can see all the old New York above ground stuff that used to be there. So something has happened, but it's never addressed. This is just the way that things are now. The National Anthem itself is also very strange and folds in, oh my God, I forget exactly, like weird religious stuff with also like uber jingoistic, like political stuff. And everybody's like, they show shots of people in the stands just like tearing up, hearing the National Anthem because she's singing it so beautifully and it means so much to them. It's just another hint of like this potentially deeper history and mythology of this world that we're living in that nobody really understands what has happened.
There's that line with the Grand Prix in that little pre-roll, and the newscaster's like, he's introducing all the different racers, and then he says, "And we pray to the god of death that some of them may be spared."
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot of weird stuff like that. It's like a weird blending of, because you had the demons come in the 1800s and start attacking the city. And we were told in the very earliest moments that that's why these European magicians were brought over, colloquially known as rat catchers. They were brought over, and that's how they kind of were folded into the upper echelons because they were the only ones who could prevent these demons from destroying the city. So you've got kind of like the old blood, the old money from New York, blending now in with what do they call them? Not nouveau riche. What do they call them? Neo-riche.
Neo-riche.
They call them the neo-riche because they essentially haven't really, their families didn't come from money. They kind of had to work. You know, they say that. With like, yeah, exactly. With like disdain. They had to work to get all that money. So that's an interesting.
Heaven forbid.
Right. Now that to me is an interesting clash. I just don't think this show, as pretentious as that setup kind of is, I don't think it really hammers that home at all.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't
now's
really
a good
have
time to get into the plot and what we think are the actual arcs throughout these 6 episodes, what it sets it up as, what it does in the middle, and then what it actually finalizes with. What did you think the show was about the first time you watched the first 2 episodes?
Well, like you've teased
Yeah.
throughout this podcast, it seems like it's about these rich, vapid kids who one of them actually happens to also be a demon slayer. And it's funny how that plays into their social life, right? And especially with the character of Helena and sort of the demon there. But then, like you said, it drops that.
Yeah.
And then basically, I mean, it doesn't have a plot as far as I can see. I mean, the Helena and Kaz stuff is sort of bookends it. But again, in a sort of just like, these are just vapid rich kids running around doing things.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's interesting and maybe sometimes not so much.
Just racing through the city and running over homeless people.
Yeah, that's a thing that happens.
That's a thing that happens in the finale. Sean, what about you? What did you think you were getting into, and then what do you think it turned into by the season's end?
So wait, hold on. I pause for a second because you said rich kids driving through and accidentally hitting somebody with a car. I'm pretty sure that's in some famous literature as well.
Oh yeah, 100%.
No, what was the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah, Gatsby, Great Gatsby.
It was Great Gatsby. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty sure that spot on is the Great Gatsby right there. So again, just another homage that this show has that we just did not have a chance to take a look at.
That's one of my all-time favorite animes. So I'm glad that he referenced that.
Great Expectations.
It is
No, the Great Gatsby anime.
To your point, though, it's sort of like it's sort of a meta satirical joke about anime while also being sincerely interested and in love with anime. And it's almost like it shouldn't be a series. It should be like, oh, this is like a really funny 5-minute YouTube thing that I watched.
Like a series of music videos, if you wanted to. Like, why weren't these weird long music videos?
And this comes from someone who really likes Yokio. Like, I really enjoy the show.
Right.
But when you it's the kind of show that doesn't allow you to look deeper into it because there's nothing there.
But they seed it like you want to, but I don't think they have anything else that goes beyond that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because if it was a music video, Dave, you would just be sitting there the entire time just being like, in December, drinking horchata.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd be thrilled. For 12 minutes at a shot, I could do that.
I love that your hipster version is somebody who just listened to all of Vampire Weekend's second album, Contra. Yeah. And that's it.
I'm a bad hipster. I'm a herb. We've discussed this.
But to answer your question, I really thought that this whole show was going to be about demon slaying, about there being some bigger plot for bigger and badder kind of demons, and Kaz was going to have to balance this social life and everything that was going on with the fact that he sort of has these powers that he really doesn't seem to want to leverage or even utilize half the time.
No, not at all. And we don't learn how he trained, how he got those powers, how he knows to use them, what the extent of his powers are. There's nothing like that. There's no training montages. He's not really tested ever.
I'm okay with them skipping that as far as the origin goes. Sure. But he, like you said, there's a certain point where honestly, I binged all these episodes back in September or whatever, and then had not watched them again until I watched the last 3 today, and I forgot that those last 3 episodes, it's pretty much definitely not the last 2. There's no demon stuff at all.
No. So for half of the series, there's no thing that the original episode sets everything up to be. So, to finish your thought.
No, I mean, basically it's, yeah, as we said, that's what's interesting. That's what makes this show something different. And the fact that it just abandons that is a really odd choice.
So what I came around to was the idea that this whole thing is just Kaz's process of getting over a former relationship and then falling into a new one. Because the bookend of this, these 6 episodes, at the beginning, you're introduced to Kaz. He's just sitting on a bench on this rooftop tennis court. And it's not a normal rooftop tennis court. It actually looks like the fight stage from Last Man. There's giant metal mechanized arms that are holding this rooftop tennis court on for some reason. But he's just up there and he's moping about Kathy, his ex, who took a finance job in San Francisco, I believe, and can no longer be with him. So he's just moping about her. And then everything that happens over the course of the next 6 episodes, the demon slaying stuff, the exorcism of his former hookup, meeting international superstars and athletes and racers and hanging out with his friends and having crazy magic stuff happen on their uncle's house in the Hamptons. All that kind of stuff is just the process of Kaz getting over Kathy and falling for Helena, falling for Helena, and then ending up in that exact same spot again. He's literally at the conclusion of the series on the same bench. Now he has a giant Toblerone, and he's watching the girls play tennis again. But he's moping over the same thing. Just swap Helena in for Kathy.
And that would be fine if there had actually been in between somewhere where he was actually like following a demon slaying arc, right? Where he's like having to learn something about himself or having to like, but it's...
But it's a weird... There are so many things in this show that it seems like, oh, well, what if we use this as a bridge to that? So like the demon slaying thing, he exorcises Helena, and then she has this weird transformation through the rest of the series, and he somehow, and for whatever reason, falls for that. They show that Charles is a mecha piloted by a small Cockney woman. She ends up being a red herring at the end so that the authorities can't arrest Helena for, guess what? Suspicion of domestic terrorism for blowing up the Bachelor Board, which is this giant Times Square-like billboard ranking of the most eligible bachelors in town. So, like, it's all this social stuff kind of folded in around Kaz. There's the demon slaying, the dealing with his aunt, the dealing with his family, his friends, his rivals, romantic relationships. That's all kind of folded in. And he really just goes from pining from over one girl at the beginning to pining over a different girl at the end for different reasons. And just all that mush in the middle, I don't know. It's not saying anything, I don't think. It's just you're just watching his events.
One of the best scenes that kind of brought all those things together was when he fought that demon and was wearing his black suit against a midnight blue sky, so therefore he could. It's like I can see you against this midnight blue sky in your pitch black suit. Like, no, why?
No, the one time. My favorite part was Sailor Pellegrino, who we were talking about, who essentially bursts into like demon form as a giant floating diamond encrusted skull.
Loved it.
Which was amazing.
All of that made the most sense, as far as what the show sets up, because it brings in the demon stuff, the magic stuff, the superstar, the romance, all that kind of stuff, the fashion, everything came together in that one plot.
Right.
And
then they dropped it because that was episode 2.
And that was episode 2.
Dave, I mean, you have to realize that everybody's aware that the jewel-encrusted skull that you're talking about is called For the Love of God by Damien Hirst. And demons use diamonds to amplify their powers. It's like Botox for those little bastards.
It is like Botox for those little bastards. What I loved about it, though, was the demon skull when it was like chasing after him just screamed like, I hate Yokio and this is for the fall of the bourgeoisie. And I'm like, all right, I'm on board with this skull. Maybe we're going somewhere.
Again, I really feel and contend that the interesting thing that's in this show is really the demon slaying aspect of it. And I'll say this, when we got to the end of those 6 episodes and Netflix didn't auto advance to episode 7, I really had a what the fuck kind of a moment, because I felt like this show just created so much. It didn't ask a lot of questions. It kind of just presented material and then sort of walked away whenever it didn't feel like it wanted to be around that material that created in the first place. And
I feel like it missed the opportunity for, like, you look at a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and one of the things that makes it so fun and great is that they're high school kids and they're fighting demons because their high school's located on a hellmouth. Right. And so, like, there's a potential there in those early episodes where all of this shallow, narcissistic, self-interested stuff that Kaz does with his friends and all of that, that's what makes it funny when he actually has to turn around and do some like demon slaying and like there's serious like darkness that they have to fight. Like that's the tension that's so funny. But then when they drop that, the demon part of it, it's just, there's nothing left. I mean, again, like I'm entertained just by sort of those clever, ridiculous meta scenes. But the more you guys are talking about it, I'm realizing, like, God, there was so much potential for this show that it didn't live up to.
He just had so many things that he wanted to do and so little time to do it in that I think they kitchen sinked it and just threw everything in for lack of any actual plot development or arc. They knew where they wanted to go from A to B and what they wanted to hit on the way there, and that was about it.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think that's why it's so shallow. It's like a big area, but very, very shallow.
Yeah.
That's it for me. Nothing else. Anything else from you guys for plot before we head to recommendations?
Can you name just one other Vampire Weekend song, Dave?
No, because you put me on the spot.
Oxford Comma.
Yeah, Oxford Comma was
on.
another good one too. Probably
All
from
right.
that same second album.
No, it's from the first album. It's from the self-titled.
Well,
What is the...
I'm so bad with musical trivia. Am I going to win cold hard cash at the end of this?
Probably.
You seem very sure of yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm saying probably. I'm putting up cold hard cash right now to see how many Vampire Weekend songs you can name.
Like 0. That's it. I can't off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
I'm no good at it. I lock
Yeah.
up.
No, I oh man, yeah.
Horchata, that's one.
Said one
Have
that
you,
was
have you
not-
heard of this song called
Have you heard of it?
Horchata?
Have you heard of the horchata?
Good for what ails you. Anyway. Yeah. Is it time for our buddy Bobby to save us?
Of course it is. Hey, everybody listening. Yeah, you. What are you doing? Watching Neo Yokio, probably. I'm so sorry. So, you tend to put your opinions on the internet, and we love to honor and discuss them. And to help us, we've brought in friend of the show, Bobby Anthem, for this week's Love It or Hate It. Bobby, take it away, buddy.
This week's Love It comes from Alex Dyke on October 1st, 2017, in a post titled A Masterpiece. Alex wrote, "From story to animation to voice acting, this piece is incredible. A true meme treasure chest. Jaden Smith deserves all the big Toblerones in the world for his performance. The only disappointing part is that it's only 6 episodes long. The story and world deserves more time than this. Netflix should halt all production on other shows to focus on this." And our Hate It gives the show a rating of 1 out of 10 from sub WMN. It's either Subway Man or Subwoman on September 24th, 2017, in a post titled Awful, Just Like Ruby. This one says, "It is awful like Ruby. I finished DreamWorks Dragons and I found this. I like finding new anime and will check out at least the first episode. I thought it would be great. I recognized Law's voice as the narrator Charles immediately. With talent like Jude Law and Susan Sarandon, I'm surprised they're lending their voices to garbage. This show has a good concept, but executed badly, just like what Ruby is to me. The only difference for me is the graphics are better for this show. If there are people with experience working on this show, why is it so bad? I was floored when I found out that Studio Dean and MOI Animation were involved because they created some of the anime I love watching, and this show is not worthy. With all the talk from Miro and Jesus, I felt like was in the ghetto again. It was not relatable at all with the references to fashion and nouveau riche. Cass throwing a Cartier off a building because an ex-girlfriend gave it to him. Yeah, I throw Cartier off buildings every day when I do not want it anymore. LOL. I would rather watch a good anime in subtitles than watch this."
I think it's pretty amazing that Bobby was able to effectively read a Hate It for this week and 2 weeks ago when we watched Ruby. It's pretty phenomenal.
It's true. That's why I picked that one, because I was like, oh, it's the thing we talked about, and somebody's mad about it.
If they managed to get Last Man, Animaniacs, and My Hero on there, it would have just blown our minds. We would have stopped this podcast and then just started reading nothing but the comments on a new podcast
From that person.
From that person.
Oh my God, was it Dudas?
No.
Oh.
It was Subwoman.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna do that. Oh boy.
Hey, before we get to our recommendations, one thing that may change my mind, fun fact, is Neo Yokio actually saved our lives.
It's true.
Speaking Allison and myself.
I
So,
love
We're only
this
like
story.
10% kidding about that, actually.
Dave
Okay.
and I had the opportunity to go to Disney World for a press trip.
This was after we had watched Neo Yokio months before.
Yeah. And Dave knows that I love Neo Yokio. And we were at...
Toblerones.
And Toblerones. Well, it's not that I love Toblerones.
But
it's just-
in Neo Yokio, in the
Yeah,
context
yes.
of Neo Yokio, Toblerones are hilarious.
Correct.
Right.
So we were at Epcot and bouncing from country to country. And I think we were in Germany.
We were in Germany.
And they had Toblerones, and they had dark chocolate Toblerones, which if I'm going to eat chocolate, I only eat dark chocolate. And
I'm with you.
yeah, so seeing this dark chocolate Toblerone, feeling a little fancy because we were in Germany, you know. So Dave said, I think you deserve that Toblerone. And so we got it. And I saved it, you know, because this is a special thing to have this Toblerone. And on the way back from Orlando,
Which is an hour flight from Orlando to Atlanta.
barely, yeah. As soon as we land, they tell us that the power is out in the Atlanta airport and they don't know when we're going to be at the gate. And let me just say that our pilot, straight up from the beginning, was just like, knew that this was going to be a disaster and said, like, there are 86,000 people trying to get into Atlanta right now and about 100,000 people trying to get out, and we're all grounded and we don't know what's happening or anything. And he was actually, people were reading tweets from their phone, and the pilot was like repeating them back to the entire airplane to like tell us what was happening. So anyway,
That was the flow of information.
so 4.5 hours later, we get off the plane.
If that,
I think, well, just from on the plane itself, it was like 4.5 hours. And then we get off, we go into the airport. It's completely, it's like pitch black in the airport. There's this line of airport employees holding out cell phones for light in silence. It was one of the strangest things.
It's creepy. It's like 28 days later.
We get into the gate and everyone is just silent and just sitting there in the dark. And then there are like police with giant guns preventing people from getting past, like into other parts of the airport.
So I was super calm and chill about the whole thing.
Yeah, Dave was just like real okay with all this.
Yep.
So also, this is like we land at like lunchtime, and we think it's like an hour flight. And we're just gonna like go home and eat.
Yeah,
So
they whipped some like peanuts at us throughout the course of this thing, but that was about it.
Delta was actually great. I want to say this: Delta and the flight attendants and everybody was awesome. They kept the Wi-Fi on.
Yep.
They gave us every snack that was left on that plane. They didn't know what was happening, and they gave us vouchers later for our troubles. But in any case, so we were starving and dying, of course. And what did I have in my carry-on bag? But a Toblerone. So we rationed it enough that the chocolate was able to sustain us for the additional, I think, 2 or 3 hours it took to get from the gate to, we couldn't get to the car because they blocked that off. We had to like take a cab home, which was insane. And Dave had to come back to the airport later to get his car. Doesn't matter. The point of the story is the Toblerone saved us. Therefore, Yokio's influence, in fact, kept us alive and well during the great airport apocalypse of 2017.
If one good thing came out of this stupid show, it is that. I think if my blood sugar would have been any lower on that, we probably would have had an international incident at the airport.
It was intense. It was a really intense time.
Yeah. But now, recommendations. Allison, thanks so much, our elegant guest, our fashionista, for joining us tonight. Do you recommend Neo Yokio to our listeners out there? And if not, and you don't have to, but if you don't recommend it, you can also put it up for the dip, meaning it's a race from existence for all time.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Would you do it for a Toblerone?
I do recommend it with caveats. I would say that if you're intrigued by this in this podcast, if you sort of have listened to it and not sure exactly if you're interested or not, the first episode gives you everything you need to know about the series. I mean, knowing that the demon stuff kind of doesn't persist, but as far as the style and the tone and everything, it's pretty much like you're going to know pretty quickly if you're into it or not. And I think that it is, especially for people who do not typically watch anime or animation, which if you're listening to this podcast is probably not you, but I think that it's extremely accessible for people who are not familiar with those styles and don't tend to watch the show. So if you want to get a friend interested in anime, this is maybe a soft gateway to that. But overall, I enjoyed it. Again, as we've discussed, like it doesn't go much deeper than what you see, but I found it entertaining. And as someone who watches way too many very dark and violent dramas, I found it a really nice antidote to that.
Neo Yokio, a soft gateway into anime, much like a half-melted Toblerone.
Aww.
Sean, what about you, bud?
I would recommend this as well with caveats. I mean, I think for the voice cast alone, it's getting the recommendation from me. I think really the relationship that we haven't really discussed, or we've glossed over perhaps, is the Lexi and Gottlieb. Yeah. They are so fun to watch in this show, and there are so many moments of just what almost seemed like genuine excitement, and then that's almost contrasted immediately by Jaden Smith opening his mouth to do anything. It can be very deflating at some time, but I mean, this Kaz character is kind of that disenfranchised, teen. But I mean, like we've mentioned, like he's older than that. Like he's
older than that, but he seems like a child.
Yeah, I mean, he's a man child with demon slaying powers, and
he's like the worst kind of millennial.
Yeah, right. I don't even know what you would go like a neo-yokelenial.
Ugh.
That sounds rough.
Sounds gross.
It sounds like that sounds gross.
Taking it back. I'm taking them all back. It's
redacted.
Redacted. I think the voice cast is interesting. I think the concept and a lot of the stuff that they present in the first 3 episodes is interesting. I'm upset that they changed tone halfway through a 6-episode series.
Yeah.
But I'm if they bring it back, I'd be curious to know, because the demon slaying portion of this is so interesting, because it seems so pivotal to their lives and sort of the status that they've created in Neo Yokio around this. I'd love to have it play a more prominent role in a second season. Otherwise, if it doesn't, I don't know that I want to watch it unless it's absolutely batshit insane. And Vampire Weekend sings horchata in it.
I really hope they do. I hope they open up a horchata shop.
Oh, God.
I'm weirdly going to recommend this only on the advice of being familiar with it from like a cultural standpoint. Just so if people start talking about Caprese Boys or start, I don't know, just so you know what they're talking about. Or if you see the, kids in cosplay, which I think is an awesome thing.
I've seen a lot. Yeah.
There have been a lot, which I think is really cool, and we need more of that. I mean, this is no Black Panther by any means, but just to be culturally aware of it, sure, check it out. It's less than 3 hours out of your life, and it's very much a background show. I don't know.
I disagree.
I don't think I'm missing any deeper elements of this show.
No, but it's just the dialogue is so well crafted. I think it's worth your attention.
You'll laugh maybe once an episode.
I laughed every minute of
so
it.
It's going to be a real soft, melted Toblerone kind of recommendation for me, but it did save my life, so I got to give it that.
I really thought you were going to send it to the dip.
No, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because it would have been 1 out of 3. I know my odds. I'm not going to burn political capital over that.
This is not the mountain that you die on?
Nope, not Neo Yokio's mountain. Oh, boys. Hey, that's it for Anime April, isn't it?
Oh yeah, we're done. We did it.
Wow, what a way to end.
And we had interesting discussions about what anime is along the way.
That's true, and that's a surprise. We didn't actually intend to do that. We just wanted to talk about shows we've been watching recently and ones that we thought were interesting and ones that our guests, like the lovely Allison Keene, wanted to talk about as well. So,
yes.
Happy to have our guests on. Happy to talk anime in April. We're going to talk mecha movie No, I don't know what we're doing in May.
Do you really
Calm
not
down.
know?
Everything's fine. No,
Okay.
I can't remember. I can't think more than a week ahead.
Okay.
If it's not about horchata, he's not interested.
Horchata May.
Oh my God.
Sharing recipes for your homemade horchata.
Well, I will simply say that a lot of people have very graciously not even recommended, but told us over email and a bunch of other mediums that we have to absolutely watch certain shows.
True.
So maybe next month we're going to watch some of those shows.
I like that. We'll take it on your recommendations. But until then, Allison Keene, thank you again for joining us. Where can the folks out there find you on social media, and what are you up to?
Thanks for having me. I had an elegant and sophisticated time.
So elegant.
So I'm actually the TV critic for Collider.com. You can find me there. We have reviews and recaps and news and everything you could possibly want for movies and TV. It's Collider.com/TV to find my stuff. And on Twitter, I am at Keene TV. That's KEENE TV.
Fantastic. Sean, buddy, what are you up to?
Hey guys, as always, I do live improv comedy in Washington, D.C. with a group that's called Nox. That's NOX exclamation point. We perform with Washington Improv Theater. You can find tickets and times with dc.org. And I'm always on social medias that have names that will annoy Dave at Sean Paul Ellis.
Fantastic. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Claw MD. You can also find me on the lines at Collider.com, Nerdist.com, and DaveTrumbo.com. If you want to find out more about SMC, you'd love it if you'd head on over to Patreon.com/Saturday Morning Cartoons. You can find out all kinds of info there and even pitch in to help the show. You can head to our website, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com, Follow along on Twitter at Morning Tunes. Remember, that's morning with a U. Take a look at Sean's handiwork on our Instagram page. Keep those conversations going on Facebook. And listen to our free audio podcast. Yes, I said free. Each and every week through YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. As always, like Sean mentioned, feel free to drop us a line. SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. It's going to wrap it up for Neo Yokio. It's going to wrap it up for Anime April. We're like a third of the way through the year. That's crazy.
Unreal.
Unreal tournament. Thank you guys for listening so much. We'll see you next time.
Unreal tournament.
Unreal tournament. You get
The end.
the end. You got Allison's stinger there.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.